Hey, it's Tyler. Today I just wanted to talk about deconstructing some of the complexity of Stella by Starlight, specifically in terms of the chord changes and ways that you can boil down the form to a manageable system so that you can not only get through it in the original key, but that you'll have confidence getting through it in all 12 keys, which is always the goal when you practice tunes. So I might have some asides during the discussion. I'll try to keep them focused so I don't get too off topic. But let's just go through the tune in the original key, and I'll talk about a couple of the main points that I think about, and then we'll do it in a different key, hopefully apply that concept to a new key area, and then I'll show you my own cheat sheet of how I think about it. So let's not talk about the actual key of the tune. That's largely irrelevant. What we're going to talk about is movement through the changes, and specifically the relationship between the roots of each individual chord, and even more specifically, the relationship between the roots of 2-5 chunks. So whether it's a 2-5 or a 3-6-2-5 or a 4-7-3-6-2-5, any kind of circle motion, I'm just going to think in terms of one modular chunk. So first chord, E half diminished, and it's a minor 2-5. So here's my first thought. I just think up a minor third for my next root. It's just a 2-5, and then that becomes my 2. I'm not moving anywhere. Down a fifth, down another fifth. Now here's my next thought, up a whole step. Okay, so the first little bit of Stella, I really have two thoughts, up a minor third, and then up a whole step. So again, back from the beginning. Here's up a minor third, so this happens to be A fully altered. So I'm going to go from A, up a minor third to C, and that's going to be the beginning of a new cycle of circle motion, right? So 2, 5, this 5 becomes my next 2, so I really don't, there's an assumption here that you're familiar enough with the tune to have a couple of baseline comfort zones. So when you have a dominant 5 that turns into a 2, I'm just going to kind of, I'm not going to identify that as a waypoint. That's just going to be kind of an assumed knowledge of the tune. So you've got a dominant 5 that turns into a 2. Circle motion, and here's up a whole step. Okay, next thought I have is tritone. So from wherever you are in this major chord, it happens to be B flat major, you go tritone for your next 2-5. And then my next thought here is down a major third, up a whole step, and then down a half step. Next thought is down a major third, and then up a whole step again. And then my final thought for Stella is tritone. So from here I go back to the tritone, away, and this is just 4-7-3-6-2-5-1. So that's Stella. So let me go back. I know that was fairly quick. So a couple main thoughts. And again, just as an aside with this modular 2-5 thinking, I've covered this in previous videos if you want to check out some 12 playing tunes and 12 keys. But anytime I've got a 2-5, right, I think of that as one modular chunk instead of a minor 2, dominant 5, major 1. And just like if I add another pair of 2-5s above that and turn it into a 3-6-2-5, I think of that as one item instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a way of like boiling down. And again, if you wanted to extend that again and add another pair of 2-5s above that, Right, there's the ending of Stella. It's basically just a 4-7-3-6-2-5-1, which again is just circle movement. You're just going around the circle of fifths. So that for me is just one chunk. Similar to rhythm changes, let's say. Let's say you're playing rhythm changes. Right, so the entire A section of rhythm changes is essentially circle of fifths motion, depending on how you choose to plug in. You could do 1-6-2-5-1, 3-6-2-5-1. You know, you could do a pedal 5. But essentially what you're doing is you're providing motion around the circle. So that's important when we talk about boiling down more complex tunes like Stella by Starlight, because if you're able to conceive of circle of fifths motion as one modular item, you can really go a long way in terms of getting rid of a lot of the clutter. So let's try this in a different key, or not even a different key, let's just say a different starting point. I'll choose something generally assumed to be difficult. So let's say C sharp is my first chord. Right, at this point, don't even really care about what the key of the tune is. I'm just concerned about relationships between roots and movement through the circle. And I'll try to use my own, what I identified earlier in terms of my waypoints. So we know that it starts with a half diminished chord. Right, so my first thing is up a minor third. That turns into a 2. Still going circle motion. Now here's up a whole step. Right? Okay, so tritone. Down a major third. Up a whole step. Down a half step. Right, here's down a major third, up a whole step. And my last thought is tritone. So I'll show you what I'm using. This is just from a little notebook that I keep. And I don't know if you can see this well. Maybe I'll put a graphic up. But essentially, this is how I think of Stella. I've boiled it down. So just looking here, my main waypoints, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 main thoughts with a couple of sub categories of movement tied to that, but really just 5. First one is up a minor third, and then tritone. And then I've got down a major third, that really happens twice in succession, and then tritone again. So you'll notice there's only really 3 intervals that I'm dealing with. I do have a whole step, up a whole step a couple times, but really we've got minor third, major third, and a tritone, which really defines the relationship in between those modular circle of fifth chunks inside of Stella. So for instance, let's pick, how about A flat? I'm trying to do something as far away as possible from the original. So if I start, the actual first chord is A flat. Again, I don't really care what the tune of the key is yet. So I've got half diminished. Now I know from here, right, A flat half diminished, C sharp fully altered. I go up a minor third for my next 2, and then from there I'm just launching into circle movement. I don't really even have to think about the key. Here's that up a whole step, tritone, down a major third this time, up a whole step, down a half first step. Down a major third. Tritone. At this point, we're back into just 4, 7, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. So it's pretty, works pretty well. It's a pretty efficient system. A couple of interesting thoughts that I had when I was practicing through some of this stuff in 12 keys. If you are interested in what the actual key of the tune is, the first melody note in Stella, it doesn't matter what key we do, and I'll do in the original. That happens to be the tonic of the entire tune. So the first melody note is the key center of the tune. And it's interesting because the first chord of the tune starts tritone away from the key center, right? So if you play the tune in B flat, first melody note is B flat, but the first chord is E half diminished, tritone away. And the first melody note happens to be a tritone away from the root of that first chord. So that's kind of an interesting symmetrical relationship between the melody, the key of the tune, and the location of the first chord. Another interesting, I guess, feature of the tune is this relationship between like a minor chord and then down a major third for a dominant 7 sharp 11. That relationship in particular, so you've got a minor 7 and then going down a major third to a dominant 7 sharp 11. You find that in a lot of tunes, like Girl from Ipanema. Right? You've got a minor 7, down a major third to a dominant 7 sharp 11. Minor blues. So a lot of times getting into 5, what you'll do is you'll go from your minor 7 tonic down a major third to a dominant 7 sharp 11, and then your altered 5 back to your 1. So that relationship is pretty interesting also, in that you see that happen in a lot of standards, and it's here in Stella. So something to think about. Again, just to summarize, I'm going to check my cheat sheet here. And you really don't need anything more than this. And this is actually probably more than I need. This is just my own, way of recording my thoughts. Yeah, but really you got minor third, major third, and tritone with a couple of whole step and half step movements thrown in. But those are a little bit easier to feel because, if you've got the flow of the tune, you don't necessarily need to be concerned as much with the closer movement as you do with maybe something a little bit wider like a third. And this is also freeing in the sense that, of course, if you're on a gig or you're playing with other musicians and they call a tune in a certain key, you have to know at least the basic relationship between the key that you're playing and where you're starting. So it is nice to know that if somebody calls Stella in G, that the first chord you're gonna start a tritone away from the root or the tonic of the key. So if you're playing in G, the first chord is going to be C sharp half diminished. But other than that, you really don't need to be concerned with what the key of the tune is, because the journey through the changes is the important part. And if you can boil down that linear motion through the harmonic structure, then it really frees you up. Because I've noticed, for sure with myself, when I was a little bit younger and struggling to find a way that worked for me in terms of relating to some of these standards, trying to keep that key center in your mind and relate everything back to a central point So it's almost like, think of a bicycle wheel, right? You've got a hub with all these spokes coming out from it. So if you think of the hub as the key of the tune, then wherever you are in the actual tune around the, the perimeter of the wheel, you're always trying to remember what that key was and then like reverse engineer it. So with a system like this, where you're not concerned with the actual key of the tune, but just the motion through the form, if you can boil it down to a couple of key points and let your ears guide you, I think it's, for me at least, this could be a totally subjective personal thing, but it seems to be a way more efficient and useful method to get you through these tunes, first of all, to allow you to learn them in different keys, and also to free you up once you're inside these different keys, so that you can step away from the form rather than be trapped inside of it. Okay, hope this was useful, and realize that some of this was a little bit quick. So if you do have any questions, go back and maybe watch again, or feel free to email me, or post a comment, and I'd be happy to talk more about it. Okay, have a great practice session. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.